So this is what my sanding environment looks like right now. Not very clean. I got the coffee back there. That's very important, especially in New York and super early in the morning. God, I think it's almost like 1 a.m. Oh my God, it's 2:30. Anyways, I actually have a lot of the parts sanded already, but this is what I'm working on right now. These are the worst offenders. A lot of glue on them. As you can see, if I can focus in on that, there's a lot of raft just kind of left over. Looks really bad. That's what was throwing off the whole fit. It's just these two pieces, they had such a huge gap. If you can see that gap, and that just that small gap was enough to throw off every single panel. So I got to spend a lot of time to get that out of there. And it's about 30 degrees outside, so I don't really feel like leaving, so I'm just going to do it all by hand. The glue's coming off pretty easy though. This is rubbing alcohol. I've used a little bit of it. So if I try to peel this guy off, not going to come as easy. But once I get some of this guy, you got to kind of get the rubbing alcohol up under. And then once it gets up under, it'll just kind of peel off a lot easier. It doesn't work as well when the glue is on two separate faces, because then it has more to grab onto, especially these side pieces, because there's a lot of texture there. But yeah, it's coming off a lot easier. Of course, you wouldn't have to do this if you didn't glue all your pieces together before you're even close to being ready to. But I really wanted to, just because I wasn't sure if the helmet was going to fit perfectly, and I didn't want to go through the process of sanding and all that if I wasn't sure the helmet was going to fit. And this stuff isn't the 98% rubbing alcohol that you can get at Walgreens and such. I think it's a little weaker, and it might have some other stuff in it, because it's supposed to be like liquid hand sanitizer, but I do know just from smelling it that it does have quite a bit of just it's isopropyl specifically. That's the type of alcohol. The other ones, there's like ethyl and then ethanol. Those might be the same, I don't know. But those other types, they don't actually work as well. I've tried it in the past and it didn't work at all, really. So I'm going to try to get rid of this raft. I don't really know the best way to do that. I don't have any low grit sandpaper or anything. It was coming off pretty well, so I might just whittle it off. Cutting outwards, not towards yourself. If you're gonna cut something, make sure you're not like that. So then if the knife slips, it's gonna straighten your thumb or go right into your finger, and then you text your friend, hey, I just chopped my finger off, and then you go to the ER to get your finger sewn together, and then you go home and you're asleep because your finger was just bleeding for like half an hour, so you're really tired. And then during that time, you don't tell your friend that your finger didn't literally get cut off. So at school tomorrow, he'll tell everyone that your finger got cut off. And then when you go to school, he's really upset because, like, you told me you got your finger chopped off and what the hell is still there. So now he looks like a jackass because he told everyone that your finger's gone. That wasn't anything specific, by the way. So this is how I've been doing the sanding, because I'm in my dorm. I've got, I got my computer just like right here. So it's kind of not very easy to sand, especially with all the dust. So what I've been doing, as you can see, it's all 3D printed. Got all the layer lines and everything. So what I'm gonna do is take some sandpaper. I'm just doing 150 grit for my base. Just normal sandpaper. It's not wet or dry. I don't really, honestly, this stuff works pretty well, even if it's wet. So I got the water and the spray bottle. Just do a small amount. It's not really, I'm not calling it a wet sand. It's more just to keep the dust down. Then you just go to town. And I'm going to fast forward through all this because this is going to be really loud and annoying. That was about a half hour of sanding for these two parts. A little bit left to do. There's some plastic in here that needs to come out, but yeah, they cleaned up very nice, as you can see. I can get that to focus. There we go. No, come on. Well, it's just a lot smoother now. That's all. Perfectly smooth, actually. I mean, yeah, raft is all gone, all the hot glue's gone. This part's ready for gluing together, really. I got to do a once over. I mean, there is a little bit left on all these parts. So once I get all the glue, there's a little, just tiny bits left. Get all the tiny bits of glue. I'm gonna glue all the parts together, probably with super glue of some type. And then once I get those glued together, I'll use some gap filler to get rid of that seam. And I bet it'll look really nice. So I got those two done in about half an hour. So that line, a very obvious line right there, that's from that variable layer height, right? So down here was all 0.25, that up to here was about 0.15, and then it shifted back to 0.25 for the rest. That shift caused that ugly line, which now I have to go through and fix. And the 0.25 millimeter layer height versus the 0.15 makes you have to sand a lot more. Like these parts I spent way longer on. Sure, they're bigger, but still, I spent like the bulk of my time was just on probably these two parts, and sure, they're very smooth, but it was not worth it. Like these two parts, the mask, it is super smooth. Like, look at that. Like you can't even see any layer lines really, besides maybe at like the far corners, but it is super smooth, and that was not a lot of sanding time. Versus these guys, which, yeah, they're smooth just like that. Well, not even. There's still some parts that are not smooth, and there's still glue everywhere. But this took forever, and it's just not worth it. Sure, you save an hour, 2 hours, 3 off of the printing time. But, you know, printing, you just let it run and you go do something else. The sanding, it takes up your time. That could be way further along the process if I didn't have to spend as long sanding. I could have got all these done yesterday. And I mean, sure, yeah, it takes longer to sand, and while you're sanding it, your arms are getting tired. I mean, because you're sitting there sanding for 2-3 hours, and then you got to stop and you got to wait a lot longer before you can go back to sanding, because, well, if you start sanding again, you're just going to get tired right away. So now that I got all these parts printed out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them, I'm going to go do a once over, because like I said, there's glue. I'm going to get the glue off the joining surfaces. Anything on the inside doesn't matter, because that's not going to be visible, or it's not also going to affect it joining. But stuff on the joining surfaces or anything on the outside needs to come off like 100%. So it doesn't, it'll be seen through the paint, and it just looks really bad. I had that with my previous one. There was a part where there's a little bit of glue visible, and it just looked terrible. So what I'm gonna do is I'll do all that, and then the next steps are going to be to do some filler primer, which will, as the name implies, it both fills in and it primes. So what that'll do is any of these little, like this ridge might go away completely. Down here, there's a lot of different little, like it's just leftovers from the printing, you know, the layer lines. I got that sanded pretty well, and it's hard to sand on these corners. Just, you get the whole thing sanded, and maybe you didn't reach all the way down, or maybe you are, but you don't want to round it off too much. So that filler primer will fill in all those tiny little gaps that are left over. It's not a miracle worker, it doesn't do it all, but it'll definitely fill in anything that I have left over. So once I get all that done, I'll sand it with a higher grit. Probably go up to the 320, which is this guy. So this guy's just a sanding sponge. And after that, I might move up to 1000 grit. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll paint it first and then get the rest of it painted and clear coat, and then finally do your 3000 and all that. But yeah. So this is what the jawline or the jaw piece looks like. I've got it sanded pretty well. I used some of this wood filler. If I can focus in on that. So very smooth. Exposure is a little high right now, sorry, but it's very smooth. You can't really tell that there's any seam. It's very nice. And I only did like a rough amount. I did this guy too, although I'd sanded it down and I put more on so that way I could do it again. And this time I'm going to use a block sander, so that way I get a nice flat line, which, so there's a, you know, piece of metal. Oh wait, benchy. So yeah, gonna go like that, and hopefully it'll turn out real nice. Alright, there we go. I fixed the exposure. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this flat sanding piece, I'm just gonna go along, I'm gonna follow the contours, the curves, so that way we get a nice seam, or lack of seam I should say, so that way everything kind of flows together nice and smooth. And then once I'm done, I'll take some more video to show you the progress. I think it'll turn out real nice. It's really dusty though, that kind of sucks.